Just pick RB. Welcome gamers, it is I, Taisatsu, and today I'll be putting on my nerdy glasses and go in depth on what ML unit you should pick around May 27th and why. This analysis is going to be focusing on two of the best DPS units in the game, being Arbiter Vildred and Specter Tenebria. Since there are a lot of heated discussions on the internet about who's the best to choose from, I'm going to cover their strengths, weaknesses, and how they shine in the overall content of Epic 7. Before I go in depth into these two, I would like to briefly talk about the rest of these units first. First off, let's start with MLK. He used to be the best, but not anymore. Dark Corvus, nothing really changed about this guy. He's still a free win button in terms of guild war and can be a really threatening pocket pick in RTA. Overall, a very strong unit, but obviously not top tier. Ruel of Light. Ruel is still Ruel, arguably one of the best soul weavers in PvP. She's still a very strong unit overall and is somewhat rising back in usage on RTA. As a bruiser player myself, she's the most annoying piece of sh. And lastly, there's Judge Kisei, arguably one of the worst ML5s out there, alongside with ML J. Kisei is still one of the best cleavers in the game. That hasn't changed, but her environment has. I personally still use her on Arena and Guild War offense when Politis isn't in the picture, so there's that. Also, Booba. With that said, I'll be going through each unit's performances or viability in the following. So, without further ado, let's dive straight into who should you choose between these two powerhouses. I'm not gonna beat around the bush here and just give the point to RB. He's the best farmer in the game ever since his launch. Specter Tenebria just doesn't compare. I'm giving the point to both of these units, but I would lean a little bit more towards Specter Teneria since she could wrap up more damage from her passive because of the first wave followers. Both RB and Specter Tenebria are most viable to use in A13. The reason for this is because they can both deal damage to both the eggs and the queen. I'm giving them points for both of these units since they're really good at this job, but I would give the slightest edge to Specter Tenebria because of her pass, giving her the most amount of damage output. Now this is where their differences become noticeable. While RB is still a really good unit in raids, Specter Tenebria is just a better unit overall due to, again, her passive giving her the most amount of damage output. Her stun is also really handy against really annoying mini-bosses as well as her non-counterable S1. With that said, I'm giving the point towards Specter Tenebria. Alright, next up is Abyss, and without a doubt, Specty is one of the best units in Abyss, period. RB is good on some floors, but it just pales in comparison as to how good Specty is on almost all of the floors, especially on the higher up floors. She has a poison on her S1 that chunks the enemy boss's HP, and can strike multiple targets if her S3 is on cooldown. A permanent stealth on S2 while stacking both defense and attack for every unit that dies on the field, and a hard-hitting S3 that can stun enemies. Her whole kit is a reason why she's known as the Queen of the Abyss. Abyss has a lot of really good rewards that can help new players and mid-game players alike. So with that said, I'm giving the point to Specter Tenebria. Next up is Hall of Trials, and I'm gonna be honest, I've been slacking on these for quite a long time. But I would say that with the right gear and team comp, both of these units can achieve a really high score. So with that, I'm giving the points to both of them. If this was the old Automaton Tower, without a doubt, I would give the point to RB, but still, in this new Automaton Tower, from a new to mid-game player perspective, I'd give the points to RB since on the lower level floors, he could pretty much mow down the whole floor by himself. Last but not least, on the PvE side, we have Expedition. Now, these two units aren't really that viable in this content. RB can do the green expeditions really well, but based from experience, he dies too easily on the level 3 ones, even with his revive protection. I haven't seen or heard any notable use for Specter Tenebria on expeditions. So with that, I'm giving the point to Arb. Now let's move on to the PvP section or the competitive aspect of the game. Let's start with the OG, Arena. And first up is Arbiter Vildred. He's a beast in both offense and defense. If you slap the shiny new RB on defense, your opponent would have to take a 50-50 guess whether it be a fast or degen RB. Either way, they're forced to bring answers against your RB. So expect to see some defense wins under your belt. RB is also one of the best cleavers in the game, so it's a viable option to cleave your way through the arena ranks. As for Specter Tenebria, while she's a really good unit on offense with the right team comp, she just doesn't compare to RB in terms of defense. There are a lot of heavy hitting AoE attacks that could threaten Specty, like SSB, Judge Kisei, Landy, Carrot, and so forth. So in this one, I would give the points to RB. Unlike Arena, Guild Wars has a more diverse pool of units in defenses. Let's start off with RB. Same as Arena, to be honest. I don't know what to tell you. He's just that good of a unit and forces your opponent to bring an answer against him. On the other hand, Specty is also a really good unit on both offense and defense. On defense, she's often paired with FCC or Troublemaker Crozet to give her longevity. Some of these types of teams also include Rewell of Light to make Specter Tenebria as threatening as possible. This type of team is also extremely good on offense as well. As such, I'm giving the points to both of these units since they're really threatening in their respective roles. Last but not least, we have RTA or World Arena. And let's kick things off with Arbiter Vildred. This guy has been dominant in this game mode for the past 4 seasons now. He fits into any team composition: Cleave, Bruiser, Tank teams, 2 Soul Weaver teams, Control, literally anything. He has around like 13 counters and still remains as a top tier unit. This man also has a lot of variety when it comes to his builds: Fast RB, Degen RB, Fast and Tanky RB, 260 Speed RB, 200 Speed RB that has loads of offensive stats. The list just goes on. This speaks volumes as to how good this unit is. In today's meta, the higher you climb, the riskier it is to pick RB early on, due to the players having access to at least 2 RB counters. So be cautious around that fact. But overall, RB is a really strong unit on RTA. Next up is Specter Tenebria, and don't sleep on her just yet. She's just as meta warping as RB when it comes to RTA. Her perma stealth can punish some team comps with little to no AoE and is often being forced as a ban. Players usually draft Specty alongside with Knights and Soul Weavers who offer protection. She's usually built quite tanky to survive some of the AoE damage output on the field. Her S1 double target hits very hard, and the fact that it can't be countered puts herself and her team at a very huge advantage. Specty works best as the match goes on due to her passive, the frenzy mechanic, and racking up of souls. This makes her hit very hard at this stage of the game, especially with her extra turn soul burn mechanic on her S1, while also being difficult to take down due to her passive, which also stacks up her defense stat. At the moment, Specty is seeing a bit of a decline in usage due to the popularity of Researcher Carrot, as well as the existing units that threaten her like Landy, Last Rider Crow, Tempest Surin, Ravi, and RB. But despite this, with the right team comp, Specty can still pose a threat to these units once she racks up her passive. Just like Arena and Guild Wars, if your opponent sees an RB pick, they're pretty much forced to pick counters and draft around your RB pick. The same case goes for Specter Tenebria. Specty is usually picked around 3rd or 4th pick. When your opponent sees a Specty pick, they also have to draft around her and secure a lot of heavy hitting AoE attacks. Recently, a new trend started to pop up, which is Lifesteal Specter Tenebria, which gives herself sustain and poses a much bigger threat to the enemy team. These units are so strong that I'm rightfully giving the points to both of them. So that's that. I pretty much covered both PvP and PvE as a whole. So at the end of the day, what's the verdict here? Who should you pick to help progress your account? This is actually a tough call. After debating with my friends and myself for like an hour or so, in my opinion, I would suggest for new players and mid-game players to pick Arbiter Vildred. His pros outweigh the cons. He's overall an easier unit to build, while also being really dominant on all PvP modes as well as most PvE content. If you're playing competitively or efficiently PvE wise, then RB is the unit for you. He's just too good to not have in today's setting and meta. This opinion may be personal bias, but there is no greater feeling in the world when RB procs a gab and just wipes the entire board of the enemy team. Specty is actually a close second, just barely losing to RB. She's obviously really good, like really good, but can be somewhat harder to gear for newer players. She's very threatening at the highest levels of competitive play and can carry your whole team. But hey, at the end of the day, it is your choice as to who should you pick on your Moonlight connection. It is your account after all, and as with all games, it's important to have fun with it and pick whoever may look the coolest or strongest in your opinion. Or pick who you think is waifu or husbando. Hopefully this video helps you make your decision. Leave a comment below as to who you would pick as your Moonlight connection. I'm personally getting my very own Specter Tenebria because she's just really strong. Also, subscribe to the channel. I'm about to hit 100 subs, which is a huge milestone. And with that out of the way, thank you for watching. Until next time.
Descending